to- topics regarding research. I was actually impressed by the presentation made by the rector and the Director Career Services Center, Nubamandi Polytechnic. And I have seen the zeal and the interest from the participants to learn. I am going to be speaking on two aspects. One is the quantitative and qualitative research approaches as regards the data collection techniques, and then the structuring of research proposals, and then detailed literature review techniques. I will go ahead to share the first slides because we don't have much time. I wouldn't know if people can be able to see what I have shared on the slides.
Yes, we're seeing, Doctor.
Can I get a yes?
We can see
Yes,
it.
yes, sir, we
Yes,
can
we
see it, sir.
Yes, we are seeing.
Okay.
Quantitative by qualitative research, data collection
Okay.
technique.
I hope it's now in the full view on your screens.
Yes, it's full screen.
It's okay. Good. Okay. By the end of this first session, it's expected that the participants will be able to know the basics of data collection and also to understand the differences between the quantitative and qualitative research approaches. And also participants will be able to understand the different data collection methods and as well to be able to differentiate between what actually data collection methods are and what data collection tools are. I believe during the rector's lecture, you're able to be conversant with what research is. Please, if I'm too fast, you can tell me, and if I'm too slow, director, you can call my attention. The rector has introduced research. From the director's lecture, we were able to know what research gaps are. And I'm sure you must have been taught what sampling is at some level. Now, since you have this introduction, I assume the thing that's left with you is to know the design, or what are you going to do, or what actually going to do. Am I going to venture into qualitative or quantitative research? So before I go, I would like to share with you some basics of some terms as relates to data collection and data analysis techniques, so that when we come across them, I don't have to go over them again. Data actually, as we all know, can be facts, numbers, words, observation, and other things. And the collection is a systematic process of gathering and analyzing a data from various sources to answer your research problems and also evaluate outcomes. And then the two aspects, data collection tool and data collection method, differs in the sense that the data collection tool is any instrument or device used by a researcher to collect or measure a data, whereas the data collection method is the technique or any strategy used by a researcher to collect his data. And to go over the basics again, when we say methods, methods are the techniques like the surveys, the interviews, the observations, the experimentation. But when we talk of tools, these are the tools you use in collecting the data. The questionnaire is one of them. And then Question Pro, SurveyMonkey, and then any digital form you're going to use in collecting data is called a data collection tool, not a method. And then interview guide, observation checklists, and others. And then also the data analysis packs, the SPSS, the Studio, the Excel, and the famous Kobo toolbox used by non-governmental organizations to collect data. These are all data collection tools. If we still narrow down to two basic terms, the qualitative and quantitative data, when we talk of qualitative data, it's actually the data that we talk about based on observations, things that we see or we feel or we can test or we can hear or we can smell. But quantitative data can either be a data we can count or we can measure. If you talk about a data you can count, that is when you talk of discrete data. You can say 9 dogs, but we can have 9.5 dogs. So a data that you can count is called a discrete data because it's based on counting or measurement. And then the continuous data is the data you can measure. We can measure weight, we can measure distance, we can measure volume. So when measuring, you can have 2.3 kg, 2.5 kg, 2.8 kg. Also in distance, you can have 1.5, 2.5. But in discrete data, you can only have a round figure, 9, 10, 12, 11, and so forth. Now, coming back to the basics or the roots, when we want to understand actually what qualitative and quantitative means, we have to go back to the main research. When you look at research, when you talk about the researcher who conducts the research, you can classify research into either primary research or secondary research in terms of who conducts the research. The primary research is when you collect the data for the first time from actually the participants, from the event, from the scene. But the secondary research is when you try to use the data that has been collected by someone. And then when you talk of the type of data collected, then that is when you talk of qualitative and quantitative research. So in general, a qualitative research focuses on understanding the human perceptions, behavior, experiences, and it deals with words, images, and objects. You use all your sense organs, the eyes, the hands, you feel, you taste, you hear. But quantitative research focuses on what we call cause-effect relationships, where we deal with statistical and numerical data using some tools to measure or collect that data. If you also want to differentiate further, the qualitative research actually answers questions like why, who, what, when, and how come. For instance, we can ask a question of how do students of New Bamalli Polytechnic feel about using smartphones for extended periods of time? This is now we are trying to assess how the human behavior here, the emotions, the perceptions. But in quantitative research of the same topic, we can measure and say how many students of New Bamalli Polytechnics uses smartphone over a certain period of time. So quantitative research actually answers how much and how many, whereas the qualitative research answers questions like who, how many, and sorry. I'm sorry, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, am I
Yes,
with
we
you?
can hear you. Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Okay.
Doctor, go ahead.
Okay, quantitative
We are with you.
research
We are
actually
with you.
answers how much and how many. If you want to work on the same topic here you want to know how many students of New Bamalli Polytechnic use smartphones over like 10 hours a day. This is a quantitative research. But when you want to know the feelings of the students as regards using smartphones over extended periods of time. That is a qualitative research. It's just like given this task or example. If you want to differentiate, you say a qualitative research will check why did some participants not submit their activity to assignment. This is a qualitative assessment. But when you want to know how many students or how many participants did not submit their activity to assignment, that is a quantitative research. And then when we want to differentiate the two about the objectives of data collection, actually qualitative research used to clarify concepts or get more and rich description. It's just like trying to say Zaria youth are confident being good fashion designers. I know people from Zaria used to have good fashion designers. So when you want to assess how confident those tailors are, that is a qualitative research using qualitative data where you're going to collect data from qualitative data collection methods. And then if you want to work in the same area, to get a statistical or reliable information, you can say 60% of Zaria youth are fashion designers. This is a quantitative research approach. And then in terms of sampling, normally the sample size in qualitative research tends to be smaller, whereas it's larger in quantitative research. And we all know the different types of sampling methods in quantitative and qualitative. So based on sample or the sample size, it tends to be smaller in qualitative data methods and tends to be larger in terms of quantitative. So this is some of the qualitative and quantitative data collection methods as far the two research approaches. So in general, if you want to narrative or you want to work on narrative or an in-depth information, then you go for qualitative research. Or if you are not after quantifying results, you are not after knowing the quantity, you are only after an in-depth or narrative information, you go for qualitative research. But if you are not sure of what you are going to measure, still you go for qualitative research. And then if you want to know what you want to measure and you want to be precise, you want to cover a large group and you want to conduct a statistical analysis, then you go for a quantitative research or quantitative data collection method. Now, this is one of the qualitative methods of data collection. Interview. An interview is a qualitative data collection method, which involves an in-depth exploration of behaviors, emotions, opinions, and perceptions from the interviewees. The person that adopts an interview is called an interviewer, whereas the person you ask questions is called an interviewee. And it goes in 4 stages, actually. It begins with apprehension, where the interviewer entertains a fear of what information am I going to get from an interviewee. Same also, the interviewee is entertaining a fear that what is this researcher coming to ask from me? And then the exploration level, where one is trying to inquire about the environment or the data or the participants he's going to deal with in terms of that interviewer or interviewee. And then the cooperation level and the participation level. Now, for a smooth conduct of an interview as a data collection method, a researcher is expected first to introduce himself and thank the participants for granting you time to ask and answer or entertain your questions. And then the next thing is you prepare for non-threatening easy questions. You don't just push in to start asking a participant heavy questions that relate to actual research. You have to greet him, thank him, ask him how was his day, how was the issues in the country. You try to create a rapport, a conversation with him so that he will feel relaxed and at home. And then subsequently, you go to the main interview in a logical sequence where you start with the simple questions, where you save your hard questions for the end of the interview. Don't just start asking him tough questions. That will create a phobia. I will try to hinder you from getting the responses you are aiming to get from the participants. And then whenever the tension arises, when you see the interviewee or the participant is scared or has this phobia, try to cool him down. Try to diffuse the tension that arose during the interview by throwing easy questions or trying to create a distract, something that is happening in the country, just to create a laughter or a joke, so that will douse the tension that arose during the interview. And then lastly, while closing the interview, you try to thank the participants for granting you time and answering your questions. So in essence, you thank them twice. One, for granting you a chance to answer your questions. Secondly, for also answering and entertaining you, for granting you audience. Now, an interview can be in 4 categories. We have what we call structured interview. A structured interview is a predetermined set of questions that, for instance, you have 10 participants. So in a structured interview, you are going to have predetermined set of questions where you ask all these 10 participants same questions in a same manner, which is different from unstructured interview. In an unstructured interview is a reverse case of the structured interview. The questions you ask Mr. A may be different from questions you ask from Mr. B, and you may not have predetermined set of questions. So it's a kind of a different scenario between structured and unstructured interview. While the third category is semi-structured interview, where you combine the structured and unstructured interview patterns. You may have questions that are already prepared, but in the course of adopting the interview, you can be flexible with the participants. You can pick 3 and treat them in the same manner, and then try to treat 6 in a different manner, and then treat the other person in a different manner. And then the last category is the focus group interview, where you have many participants, where you ask them questions simultaneously, where that kind of conversation can stimulate discussions. When you ask Mr. A, that may remind Mr. B or C to throw in something that will remind Mr. A, where that will stimulate discussions where you maximize the types of responses you get from your participants. Now, the data collection tools for interviews. We have what we call the interview guide and interview schedule. If I have not forgotten, once after the lecture, I'll try to share with you a sample of an interview guide and interview schedule. An interview guide is a guide that will try to guide you on how to conduct the interview, where you state how you meet the participants, you greet him, you ask him this question, after this, you ask him this. While the schedule is the total sum of how you're going to conduct the interview, it may not be so thorough and breakthrough like that of the interview guide. And then you have recording devices while you conduct the interview. You can use your smartphone, of course. You can use audio recorders to record all the conversations. You can use digital camera as an evidence that you have conducted an interview. You can use cam recorder. And then there are qualitative data analysis software where you can analyze and code and also present your data. Some of the examples, I think, are famous. We have the atlas.ti, we have the QCoder, we have RQD and others. We have the transcription softwares where you can convert the audio you collected during the interview into text. During the interview, if you collect an audio during the interview using any of the recording devices, you can use any transcription software to convert that audio into a text so that you can also convert that text into a data so that you can analyze. The next thing is observation. Observation is also a qualitative data collection method where you watch and record the behavior and characteristics of your objects under observation. It also involves all the 5 sense organs: to feel, to hear, to sense, and also to watch. So this is also a type of a qualitative data collection method. Under the observation method, we have the participant, the non-participant observation. The participant observation is you entering into the participants to observe them and also try to note how they behave. In non-participant observation, the researcher is on the side, but is trying to look and see how the participants are conducting themselves. But in participant observation, you go along with the participants, you play with them, you mingle with them. While you do that, you pay keen attention and try to understand how they behave. There's also a structured and unstructured observation, also a narrative, a naturalistic, and systematic observation. A systematic observation, you try to bring the world, your observation, to a clearer view where you can have a holistic view so as to have a complete data and detail of what you are trying to observe. And to attain a good observation method, first of all, you need to select an observation site. Secondly, identify what and who to observe, because you have to identify what to observe before you can observe that identity, that object. And then choose an observational rule. Then later on, you try to develop an observational protocol. This is what I'm going to do first, followed by this, followed by this. This is just like an interview guide or interview schedule. We have an observational protocol in observational collection, data collection technique. And then later on, you try to record the observational details. Then you engage in actual observation. Then you try to leave the site of observation humbly with respect so that you will not tamper with the objects, with the participants, with the subject under observation. You are going to leave a serene environment for other people to also come and observe. And then while in the course of doing the observation, you try to write whatever you observe promptly. And then a survey. A survey is also a quantitative data collection method that uses tools like questionnaire. A survey can either be written or it can be an interview. It can be written in form of questionnaire, where you administer questions to participants and try to survey their perceptions regarding a quantitative aspect you want to measure. Or it can be an interview. If it is a written survey questionnaire, it can be either in person, where you give some students of your departments or students of your institutions, or it can be a mail, where you send to different individuals, or it can be through internet. where you send a link through social media. Nowadays, you see people trying to share their research in Facebook, in Instagram, and ask people to kindly fill the survey. This is a kind of a written survey, which we can use in getting a quantitative data. And also a survey can be through an interview. If it is an interview, it can be a face-to-face interview where you ask the participants to measure what you want to quantify. It can also be a telephone where you call people like the MTN, the Globe, and other telecommunication outlets used to call users, try to quantify or try to assess a new package. That is a survey. They are trying to quantify a new package so as to know, to improve from what they have. We also have a focus group interview in form of a survey. While asking questions, there are things you need to avoid. You have to be wary of what we call fence sitters. Sometimes if you give people a survey, some people have this laxity attitude where they will just try to choose questions that have arranged at the end of the paper. Maybe disagree from the first part to the end part. If you know people are of that nature, try to avoid them. These are called the fence sitters. And then try to avoid people that are called floaters. These are people that choose substantive answer to a question when they don't even understand what the question is about. Try to create a forum where people can ask questions to things that they don't know so that you avoid floaters. And then try to avoid close-ended questions in terms of survey. Survey used to have open-ended questions. And then mutually exclusive and exhaustive response should also be avoided. Next is these are the stages of questions. There are questions we call the opening questions, where you try to identify the characteristics of participants they have in common. You try to introduce themselves, the names, the demography. You try to take the data about the participants. Then the introductory questions, where you introduce the general topic of discussion so as to stimulate the conversation and improve interaction about any group you want to ascertain the information you want. Then transition questions. These are questions that to move the participants into the focus of discussion, where you dwell in the main part of your research. Then the key questions are the questions that focus on the main interview. And then the ending questions are the questions that you try to show the participants as if you are rounding up the interview or the survey you want to make. And then the final questions where you show the interviewee or the participants that you are thanking him, you are rounding up your questions. Also, you try to avoid long questions, double-barreled questions. Double-barreled questions are questions you can break into pieces so as not to confuse the participant. For instance, if you ask an interviewee, what do you feel about current online workshop compared with the last year's online workshop? You see, you are asking him about 3 questions here. The issue is you try to break this question into 3. First of all, you ask him, what do you feel about the current online workshop? He will give you his feelings. Then you try to ask him, can you recall any workshop last year or last 5 years or last 10 years? You get his feelings also. And then how do you feel they compare? Meaning, how do you compare the last workshop and the current online workshop you are doing? So these are double-barreled questions. If you ask these 3 questions at a go, that may confuse the participants, and you may not be able to get the actual answer you want. And then questions involving jargons. Try to remove all the heavy words the English words that you think may be confusing to participants, try to remove all those heavy words so as to put a simple English where the participant will be able to read and understand. And then lastly, try to avoid biased questions that will feel you have already stated the answer to the participant, or you are sending an insult to his community, or you are doing otherwise. Now, the next most important quantitative data collection method is experiment, which we normally do in science and engineering, where you manipulate two variables to see the one you have changed, how will it cause change to the other variable you kept constant. A variable is anything in an experimentation that can change or can vary. That is actually what variable is. If you say a variable during a research is anything that can change or can transform or can vary, we have two types of variables. We have the dependent and independent variable. The dependent variable is the one you try to measure or you observe and you are expecting it to change. That is a dependent variable. But the independent variable is the one you are trying to manipulate, or the one that the researcher is always changing to see how it will have effect on the dependent variable. And in the other case, the control variables are the factors you keep constant to see the impact of dependent and independent variable. To give an example, we take the famous river in Zaria. I think it's River Galma, right? If you want to know what an independent and dependent variable is, for instance, you ask students in physics, in geography, or chemistry to go and measure the temperature of River Galma at different meters. For instance, River Zaria is 20 meters deep, and you ask students to go and measure the change in temperature for each change in meters, like change in 2 meters, 4 meters, 6 meters. Try to measure the change in temperature of River Zaria. Now, the independent variable here is the depth of water because it's the one you keep changing. You change from 2 meters, 4 meters, 6 meters, 10 meters, 15 meters. But the dependent variable that you want to observe is the temperature here in this case. And then the control variables is you are using the same reverse area, same thermometer to pick the change in those variables. This is an example of an experimentation method to know what types of variables are. And now, having collected your data, there are qualitative and quantitative data analysis methods. I'm sure the next lecture, either this week or next week, there will be a data analysis. I'm sure you will get more and more about the data analysis. These are some of the data analysis methods in qualitative research. You have content analysis, where you try to analyze the documented information you get from the text, media, or the physical items. It's called the content analysis. And then when you try to generate theories from the data you have collected, that form of data analysis is called grounded theory. And then there is the narrative analysis. Narrative analysis is the method where you try to sorry. I hope we are all together.
Yes, we are.
Okay, and I hope I'm not fast.
We're enjoying it, doctor.
Okay.
Please, noisemaker, please. Can you mute your mic? Go on, sir.
Sorry. Okay. Now, the next thing is the narrative analysis, where you try to examine the stories or the narratives you have collected in the context of your research questions. And then the last one is the thematic analysis, where you want to try to establish relationship between the ideas you are looking into and then the recurring themes within the qualitative data. And then we have the data, quantitative data collection analysis method. You can either use the descriptive analysis, which are the actually first level analysis to help a researcher try to find the absolute numbers and summarize the variables and their patterns, where you use the mean, median, mode, frequency, standard deviation, and what have you. This is a descriptive analysis under the quantitative data analysis method. And then there is an inferential statistics, where you try to show the relationship between the multiple variables you are studying. When you want to know or describe the relationship between two variables, then you are trying to do what is called correlation analysis. But if you try to show or predict the relationship between two variables, then you go and try to employ regression analysis, which I'm sure the lecture that will pertain data analysis will dwell much on these issues. And then the analysis of variance, which is called ANOVA, where you can have one-way, two-way, or what have you, to show the extent where two or more variables differ in your research. I guess this is the first slides I have prepared, and I would like to jump into the second slide that pertains the literature review and structuring of the research proposal. With your permission, the Director, Career Service and Advancement Center, can I go to the second slide?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I think it's better to go to the next slide so that when it comes to question and answer, we can combine.
Okay. I hope you can see the second slide.
This is the first slide.
Yes, sir.
No, this is the first. I think this is the first slide.
Okay. Let me try to share the second slide. I will share it now.
Okay, sir.
I hope you can see that.
Yes.
Yes, we can see.
Yes, we can see, sir.
Yes, it's visible. We can see.
Okay. I try to take. I want to take some time in this because it's one of the most important things and one of the things that students used to miss because it's a component of your studies to submit a project before graduation, and start a research proposal is one aspect. A literature review counts one of the most important things.
Sorry, sir. Sorry, Doctor.
Yes.
Here with us, we have participants from research institutions like NARIT. We have staff from NCAT, Nigerian College of Aviation Studies. We have staff from academic staff from KASU, ABU, Kogi State. We have ATBU. I just want to draw attention to know that the caliber of our participants that we have, so that we can address the various interests.
Good. Thank you very much. Sir. That is a robust participants, and I welcome all of you.
You have BK.
Wow.
Thank you very much.
That's interesting.
I just wanted to draw your attention. Yeah.
Now, thank you. Now, by the end of this, it's expected that the participants will be able to know the basic components of research proposal, also to know how to structure a literature review. Now, it's interesting to know that we have participants coming from research institutions and also from academia. Those from academia and research institutions, I know every year there is to be a call for proposal from TED Fund and other bodies. So we try to show the importance of research proposals, that it's not only the academic aspect. We have dissertation proposals that pertain schools, grant proposals for governments like that of TED Fund and other funding budgets, bodies. Then the thesis proposals, a requirement for graduation. We have project proposals. We have research funding for also awarding bodies. We have pre-proposals that try to request you to present something like a concept note, like it's done in TED Fund, where you present a concept note, a brief about the idea you want to work on. And then later on, you will be asked to bring the actual proposal. We also have different types, the feasibility, program evaluation, and the rest. And we can have a solicited proposal where you are requested to bring a proposal. And then we have the unsolicited proposals, which you feel deemed to present to an organization prior to the call for proposals, or you think they may have an issue that they want to solve. So you tender a proposal, just like we do when you're seeking for a job. You budge into an organization, you drop your CV and possibly a cover letter to the registrar of that organization or to the human resources, where he will archive it and keep in view. So same thing as on unsolicited proposals. And then the purpose for research proposals varies. There are those that are for academic research, some are for scientific, some are for business and industry. Pharmaceutical industries can request you to bring a proposal about how they can co-opt a certain substance into their drug making to maximize their profit, or the NGOs, the non-governmental organizations, the government agencies. So there are different purposes as attached to the research proposals. And now, in developing a research proposal, there are things that are desired from a researcher. First of all, you try to identify a topic of research before you can even go ahead to write. And then you try to review the existing literature in that area, or in that field, or in that topic. And then try to formulate your research objectives, or your questions, or your hypothesis. Then you formulate your research methodology, and then a timeline, of course. And then you consider the ethical considerations in that area you picked. If it involves the use of humans, animals, some ethical considerations about the area or the organization you're going to work. All these things you have to consider. And then you actually come down to writing the research proposals. You may have seen varied approaches of research proposals, but mainly the key components that mostly are present in research proposal will include most of these aspects: the title, the introduction, the research objectives, the literature review, the research methodology, the significance and expected outcomes of your research proposal, and then, of course, the outlines of the key milestones of activities you want to carry out in that your research or your study. And then, of course, the list of all the references, meaning the sources you have consulted while in the course of getting the literature and other informations for your research proposal. Now we begin with the title. And most, of course, the organization sometimes stipulates, like the TED Fund, I know, used to tell you in your concept note that your title of your topic should not exceed 20 words. So the shorter the number of words in your title, the better. And then what you actually want from your title is to be short and precise. And then most research engines, libraries, databases, and catalogs works on either title, abstract, or keyword. So you try to work on getting a short and precise title. And then the title is actually what attracts the reader from your work. And then it tries to also describe the content of your research. Most of the times, you see students or lecturers or researchers while in the course of presentation, the moderators will try to tell you, but what you are working on do not tally with either the title or the objectives of your work. So try to marry your topic with the content of your research. Also, try to convey the main topic of the study. Try to be concise. Also, avoid abbreviation in the topic and jargons. Also, try to be clear and short as possible. There are 4 things expected of you from your topic or your title. This is the content. Try to make sure the good title predicts the content of your research or your work. And then it should be interesting. It should be a catchy title. In Nigeria, you see how we name our companies and schools differs from other parts of the countries. You see, for instance, the director, Career Service Center has a company. He will try to say Malam Aliyu Kofa Company and Sons, and Sons. He will mention lots long names. So try to make your name very catchy and interesting. It should also reflect the tone of writing, and it should also contain important keywords that if other researchers have searched, they can be able to get information. Now, in drafting your title, there are techniques of drafting research title. This title in a research proposal is a lecture on its own. Last month, I was just teaching some researchers aspect of crafting title in their research. So there are techniques of drafting research title. One, we have what we call the hypothesis result technique, where you try to bring out the hypothesis you are working on. Then try to modify that hypothesis to become a result you are looking for. You can use that as a topic. Like if you are hypothesizing to know, does taking fresh fura and nono induces sleep on Zaria farmers, for instance? Now, you are expecting a result to get where you find out how fresh fura and nono induces sleep on Zaria farmers. This is a result of the hypothesis you are trying to work on. So this is the first technique. We have what we call arrangement technique. The arrangement technique pertains where you are going to select words, then arrange these words, and then review your words. You can have 3, 4, 5 different arrangements. Then you make an order of this arrangement. And then you come to review and see which one has few number of words. That is the arrangement technique method. And then we also have result, method, topic among sample method, where you first mention the result you want to work on. Then you go ahead to mention the topic, the method of study you're going to employ, then the topic, then the sample. For instance, if you are working on motivation makes lecturers perform better, a qualitative study of welfare among new Bamali Polytechnic staff. The result here is the motivation. You are looking for how, when you improve welfare of lecturers, is it going to motivate lecturers or no? So you are looking for motivation as a result here. So you put it as the first thing. Then you bring the method of study. Is it qualitative or quantitative? And then the welfare is the topic you are here working on. And then the sample you are working on Nuhu Bamalli Polytechnic staff. This is also another method of crafting your title. And then the last one is you use these key words like what to study, among whom to study, where to study. Just like saying traditional healing practices among rural communities in Zaria. The traditional healing practices are what we are studying here. Among who are we studying here is the rural communities. Rural communities of where? In Zaria. So you can follow this method also to craft your topic. So this is about topic. Now, the next thing you move to introduction. In introduction, this is where you introduce the audience to the topic you are working on. In the introduction, you try as much as you can to let the reader know what you want to do. And also try to tell him what actually necessitates the research you're going to do. And then why is even the research you're going to do important? And then what problem are you going to solve in that research? These 4 things ideally should be part of your introduction. Try to answer these 4 items or more in your introduction. In a graphical format, you try to start from a general perspective and then you narrow down to specific perspective. When you're working on issues relating energy, for instance, energy in Zaria or lack of electricity in Zaria, when you want to speak in general, you try to speak on how energy is a problem in the world. You may wish to narrow to Africa, down to Nigeria. In Nigeria, you can come down to Kaduna. From Kaduna, you speak of Zaria. Or when you talk of different sources of energy, you try to speak of energy in general. Then you speak of renewable and non-renewable sources. You begin to pick the area you are interested in. So you narrow down, you contextualize the actual problem, the existing solutions from literature, and then you pick which solution is the best. Maybe you are talking of, you are a chemist, you are talking of disinfection methods in water. The people from Narik, Zaria, for instance, you are trying to check different disinfection methods. You talk of chlorination, you talk of ozonolysis, you talk of UV, you talk of different methods. Then you talk of which one is the best. And then you talk of the limitation gap of knowledge or limitation or gap of knowledge. And then you try to show your research question and aim. These are all part of your introduction. Now, we move to statement of the problem. In statement of the problem, or statement of the problem actually encompasses of 3 key things. One is the context. Second, the knowledge gap, which we have been taught by the director. And then third is the significance. So if you can be able to contextualize these 3 things, you can be able to do what is called a problem statement. Under the context, you try to talk about the current situation of things regarding what you are working on, and then try to show what is wrong with the current situation, and also what needs to change in current situation under the context. Then you move to speak of the knowledge gap, where you try to identify the existing gap in literature as regards the area you are working on. You can use this template. You say dash dash is known and dash dash is not known in that area. Like you try to give an evidence that X, Y, Z is known in what I'm working on and A, B, C is not known. so that you try to establish the knowledge gap in that work you are doing. And then lastly, you try to show how urgent, how needy, and significant is it to solve that problem you have just stated. In here, you can use statistics to back what you are claiming. You can say 20% of people in Zaria are not having access to this, and that, so as to show the need to solve the challenge faced by this 20% of people you are talking about. So problem statement is just the context, the knowledge gap, and then significance. Then research objectives. Research objectives, these are exactly trying to say what you want to achieve in the course of your work. This we don't have to take much time in research objectives. Research objectives are what you actually want to achieve, and you have to make sure they are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. Specific in the sense that you have to make sure you mention what you want to achieve. You don't leave it in darkness. You have to be sure what you want to achieve is measurable. You want to make sure you have 10% increase in success of WAEC examination, for instance. But you cannot say you want to have A students all in Zaria community. You have to measure what you want to achieve. And then you want to make sure what your objectives are also achievable given the resources and time you have. Is it possible for you to achieve this within this time frame? If your project is going to span for 6 months, is it going to be achievable within 6 months? If it is going to be resource-wise in terms of money, is it going to be possible to achieve this with 1 million or 2 million or 50 million with that resources? And then is what you are going to do in terms of objectives relevant or realistic? And then try to look at the time. In terms of the objectives, these are some of the examples. Your aim, you try to say the aim of the study is to determine. You use infinitive verbs. You try to show it in infinitive form, to explore, to investigate. While the objectives are the steps you follow in achieving your aim, which are the breakdown of the breaking stones that will allow you to achieve the total goal that you mentioned in your aim of the study. Like the qualitative methods will be used to, or the work will use surveys to collect, or you are using statistical analysis, then the research will measure, then you try to show. These are some of the objectives. These are further examples of the objectives, aims and objective of research. Now, the literature review. The literature review revolves around the research gaps that we have been taught by the director. You try to identify the unknown from the already known knowledge, the needs for the research, then what is the contribution of experts in that area or the study you are trying to work on, and then what are the scholarly discourse. This has worked on light. Maybe you have 5 parameters that relate to your field. You have light, you have the CO2, you have mixing, you have other parameters. Now, what are the scholarly discourse in light? What are the scholarly discourse in mixing? What are the scholarly discourse in oxygen and whatever? So the literature review used to revolve around the research gaps, the research needs, the expert knowledge, and then the scholarly discourse. Now, for you to achieve a good literature review, these are some of the steps you follow to have a good literature review. You first of all identify or choose your research questions, and then search for literature. When you search the literature, then you select and evaluate the sources you search your literature from. Then try to analyze and synthesize the information you collected from your sources. Then after that, you create an outline of how your literature is going to be, like a table of content, or you sketch. And then later on, or finally you write, then you revise what you have written, and then you edit what you have wrote. Now, in selecting a topic or your research questions, these are the key things you look at. You look at the scale you are going to work on. Are you going to work on individual or small group of people or a small community? Are you going to work on a macro scale where you take a global issue or a global scale? So you have to know the scale you are working on. Then there are what are called subject-specific factors, where you look at the time. You can't work on a project, for instance, that spans from, you say you are going to take 2005, you take backwards up to 001. You can't get some people to give you information, so you can't lay your hands on some data. So you have to be clear and be truthful to yourself on the historical periods you are taking, the location, the geographical locations, the regions, the state, the local governments you are going to work on. Are you going to work on Zaria local government only? Or you want to take another local government in Kaduna State? Then you look at the population, the specific group, or the communities, the context, and then the knowledge gap. You have to also look at, are you going to work on the empirical studies, the methodological? Are you going to work on practical or the theoretical studies? Then the second thing is you go to search for literature. During the search for literature, the first thing is you try to identify the key concepts and terms in your topic. Since we say in the first place, you try to choose a topic, even in literature review, when you ascertain the topic you are going to work on. Now, when you come to identify or to search for literature, it's important to know your topic, because that topic will be an item of search from databases. You will have to look for synonyms of terms in your topics, the abbreviations of topics or the words in your topic, the keywords, the spellings, the vocabulary terms. Then try to choose the library sources or the databases which you're going to source your information from, like the academic journals, either the physical or the online, the Google Scholar, textbooks, Science Direct, Thesis, and whatever. You try to look for the sources of information. Then you try to develop a search strategy. Most people will just go to Google and put in their topic completely. They will write physicochemical analysis of, they will mention the fruit they are working on, or the leaf they are working on, or the seeds they are working on. Sometimes you have to know, it's only what is there in a database or a search engine you can get. So you have to develop a strategy. Are you going to use Boolean operators, where you bring the keywords and put and in between them? Or you put not, like you put two words, strategy and search, you put and in between them. So it's going to fish out any document that has the word strategy and search in it. But when you put search, not strategy, it will bring documents that have only search, but will not bring documents that have strategy. If you put O, it's going to give you the choice of the two. Then the truncation search, the wildcard search. These are all search strategies you need to identify before you even go ahead to start searching. And then try to review and refine your results. An example here is, assuming you are working on impact of social media on mental health of students of New Bamalli Polytechnic. You see here, we have 3 keywords. We have the social media, we have the mental health, and we have students. So looking at these keywords, when you want to identify the key concept and terms, you should also be able to know that when you are looking for social media, Facebook is a social media, TikTok, Snapchat, Twitter, and Instagram. So you can re-strategize your search terms. Sometimes you can look for impact of Facebook on mental health of students, .. because it's part of social media. So that's the essence of identifying the key concept and terms. So if you are looking for an information on social media, if you see a journal that pops up and is talking about Facebook or TikTok or Snapchat, it's all part of what you're looking for. Sometimes you search for TikTok, mental health, students. You can put TikTok asterisk, you put and in between them, you put mental health, you leave space, you put and, then you put students. So it's going to fish out any document, any journal that has 3 of these related together, or works, or any data. You'll just find a lot of information about it. Same thing with mental health. You can search for synonyms, the self-esteem, self-perception, and whatever. And then students, you can look for teenagers, adolescents, Gen Z, youth, etc. Now, the next step is to select and evaluate the sources. Now, for you to be able to know the most reliable and good sources you're going to work on, 1, you have to give emphasis on peer-reviewed articles or articles written by an authority in that field. If you are in physics area, for instance, you just step to your leg on a type article written by Einstein. You don't have to have doubt on that document because he's an authority in that area. People that you know are authority in their fields, you see documents from them, you give them emphasis. Or peer-reviewed articles, articles that were peer-reviewed and they were authoritatively confirmed to be of high standards. And then published textbooks that are also recent and reliable. And then also try to evaluate the search scope of the online sources. Sometimes after searching from an online source, you can go for the scope to see where does that search engine source its sources. You will see it sourced information from biology, physics, chemistry. While you are working in, for instance, a social science area, you begin to tell your supervisor there is less published in that area. When maybe it's from you, you did not enter the real search, or the sources that popped up are from sciences or from engineering. Then the next thing is you try to analyze and synthesize the information. How do you do that? You have 2 ways. In analyzing that information, you have to read. You have to read what you got. Then you try to synthesize that information. This is where your brain plays that role. Whatever information you get, you have to read thoroughly. You don't only leverage on AI to read and explain to you. We're going to come on the AI tools that you can subject your paper to give you a summary. Here we said critical reading. You have to read yourself. Even if AI gives you a summary of a paper, you know that is a computer-generated information. So you have to critically read and use your brain, use your basic science knowledge to analyze, or you use your scientific method to ascertain what you have gotten. Now, try to create an online outline for your literature review where you narrow the work, like we just did in the introduction. So even literature review has an arrow of being narrowed. You try to introduce, then you bring the background or the methods you are working on, and then the main text or the themes you are working on, then discussion, and then you conclude. You mind the types of paragraphs you are working on your outline. There are paragraphs that are introductory in nature. That is the essence of the introduction. Then the descriptive paragraphs. These are paragraphs that will try to show the evolution of the topic you are working on, or the taxonomy of the animal you are working on, or the history of the geographical location of the area you are working on. And then there are empirical evidences from primary sources to show the methodological gaps, the theoretical gaps, the chronological gaps, or the thematic gaps. And then there are paragraphs that will also deal with the summary. We'll try to conclude. Like if you ask ChatGPT, ChatGPT can be able to generate an outline of your literature review. This is allowed for you to ask ChatGPT or other AI tools to generate an outline for you for your research topic. For instance, you are working on biodiesel production from microalgae grown in Zaria. Now, you can put this topic on AI and ask AI to generate an outline for you are going to work on. AI will give you the introductory paragraphs. This is what you discuss under introduction. This is what you discuss under the descriptive paragraphs. This is what you discuss under the methods. This is what you discuss under the theoretical gaps. And then it will show you how to conclude and summarize your paragraphs. Now, the next thing is you write what you have gotten. Now, in writing, there are two things expected of a researcher. Those things are called claim and stance. A claim is an opinion that you try to prove with evidence, while a stance is your attitude while you are writing. Sometimes you can write a letter to your wife, or to your senior at work, or to somebody. The reader can dictate your mood while you are writing that letter, even though he was not there. That is called a stance. Stance is you trying to show your attitude, or the reader can detect your attitude while trying to go through that write-up. While a claim is that opinion that you try to prove with evidence. So in writing, you have to be careful about these two things. And then after writing, you try to revise and edit. Now, in writing your paragraphs, always try to remember what we call meal. We all know food. We remember food. We eat food 3 times a day. So try to remember what is called meal plan. In writing literature, most of the times, researchers used to write literature anyhow. There is need for you on each paragraph you are going to work on to remember meal plan. What meal plan actually stands for is, on each paragraph, you try to utilize this meal plan. On the head of the paragraph, you try to introduce the main idea you want to talk on. That is the claim. You claim, you make a claim in that head of the paragraph. Then the evidence, after making the claim, you try to support that main idea you have claimed with an evidence from your literature. And then the next thing is you analyze the evidence. This is where assessors, reviewers would want to see your input. And also, the last thing is to link the discourse with the next paragraph or back to the study or general study you are working on. Example, here we have the breakdown of meal plan. The first write-up in green, the writer is trying to claim that technology is something students need to be capable of using in order to succeed in their future lives and careers. This is a claim he is making. Now, in order to back or give an evidence of this claim, he brought an evidence. He said, according to Dawn 2016, in the past, the only jobs where a certain degrees of expertise with media or electronics was required were desk jobs. Now he is backing the claim he did. Now, the next thing you do is you try to analyze the evidence you have just brought up. Now, this is the input of the researcher. Try to analyze the evidence you have just brought up. Now, the last thing is try to link what you have just analyzed to the next paragraph or to the previous or to the general work you are working on. This is what we call claim in writing your literature. And then stance. Stances in literature review are of 4 categories. We have what we call the hedges. This is when you use things that shows uncertainty, or they are softened, or they are cautioned in type, or they are doubtful. Like when you use this may likely, or this may, or perhaps, or possibly, or might. If you are an actual user of AI, you come to understand AI sometimes uses hedges. So this is one of the areas your lecturers or assessors will be able to say, you, this guy, you are copying from AI. Because once you see hedges, people don't have much contribution into that write-up because you are not sure. You say may, likely, perhaps, possibly, might. So the assessor will try to say, oh, this guy is using uncertainty, is using hedges in his write-up. There is what we call boosters. Boosters try to emphasize certainty or try to show the strength of your claim during your write-up. When assessors or reviewers or your lecturers see you in discussion or your literature review using words like certainly, no doubt, obviously, or very, almost, they know you have a strong conviction of your claims. Because your claims, you are trying to show a strength of a claim, strength of your conviction. There are also counters that try to show your argument or contrast to previous information you have mentioned. Like when you use the word alternatively, however, yet, still, although, but. These are all counters that are stances in literature review. You can also use them in discussion. And then the last one is what we call reformulation, where you try to exemplify or explain by saying, for instance, that is to show your knowledge in reading more literatures or trying to use your personal knowledge to make readers understand what you are writing on. So these are examples of stances. Now, I noted since from the one during the rector's lecture and that of the director, many people used to ask questions about AI. You can also leverage on the power of AI on literature review. For instance, we have just talked about title, outline, we talked about meal plan. You can ask ChatGPT to give you list of project topics in an area. And AI will give you more than 50 or 100 topics. You choose and then you domesticate based on your need or your locality or your geographical location. Or you can ask ChatGPT to give you an outline of your topic that is agreed. You use you go and discuss with your supervisor. This is what I intend on writing. The supervisor will try to tell you, add this, remove this, like a sketch of what you are going to write. What is not required from you is to copy the literature, but the outline, the AI is going to assist you to tell you, this is what you are going to discuss first, followed by this, followed by this. The meal plan, if you ask ChatGPT to give you a meal plan for a topic or a paragraph you are working on, just after this lecture, if you have chance, I notice when you are moving from Zaria to Kaduna, there are people that are selling fruits, vegetables, Irish potato, and others. Now, if you ask an AI to give you meal plan for instance, you are working on impact of excessive road speeding on vendors by the highway in Zaria local government. Just put this topic on AI and request for meal plan for this. AI will break down and give you this analysis. This is the power of AI. We have some tools that can also allow you to ask questions and get papers related to all that questions that the elicit is very enjoyable and easy to use. There is also Litmap. Litmap will allow you to get a seed paper, one paper that you read and enjoyed. Once you tag that paper, AI through Litmap will be able to get all the relevant papers that are working or have worked on the same area or on the same findings or close to same that are relevant to that paper that you picked. It's a seed paper, a Litmap. Litmap is something that helps you in literature mapping as well. Then there are others like Spotify, and then explainpaper.com. It's also an AI that uses semantic search, where if you have a paper that you don't understand some of the paragraphs or the abstract, you can copy that aspect of that paper. Once you open the platform of explainpaper.com, just put it, copy it and put it by the side and adjust the level of English. If you are a beginner's level or a moderate speaker or a professional speaker like them, Wole Soyinka and others, you can adjust the speaking or the level of response you're going to get from AI. Other important tools include the Jenny AI, Yomu.ai, Iris.ai, and what have you. There are lots of AI tools you can leverage on and get more and more. Then research methodology is actually the blueprint of how the study is going to be conducted, where you show the research design, the data collection methods, the data analysis techniques, the justification and limitation. This is just a sample of a methodology where you can show the study type, the design, the population, the study area, the sampling technique you are going to involve, the sample size. Of course, you use a formula to arrive at this, the data collection tool, the data collection method, the type of data analysis, and then you try to show ethical consideration. For instance, you're going to go for an interview. You have to show how you're going to seek for the consent of participants, seek for the consent of the institution or the zoo or the locality or the pharmacy or the hospital you are going to work on. Then the expected outcome, this is where you try to link your results with your problem statement and your research objectives. Try to show smart expected outcome. Make sure whatever you are going to mention in expected outcome is also specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Expected outcomes or the significance are like a mirror or answers to your statement of the problem and objectives. Let it be that you asserted in your statement of the problem under the context that XYZ is occurring, then the expected outcome is going to be a mirror that you have answered, or you are going to answer those problems that you stated in your statement of the problem. Then the timeline. Timeline, you use tools like Gantt chart, or you use your Excel sheet, or you use your Word, Microsoft Office to draft a table where you are going to show the breakdown of individual activities you are going to do from time A up to time X. From this date, you can be able to match two activities that will work concurrently. I'm sure if you leverage on tools like Gantt chart, you're going to learn on how to make a work schedule for your research proposal. And then lastly, the list of references where you try to show all the source of information to support your claim, to show how original your work is, to also give credit to researchers you get ideas from, also to guide subsequent readers on how to go for further reading. Using any of the following styles, either using Harvard referencing style, the APA, the Chicago, the MLA, the Vancouver, and other styles. I know part of the outline of the programs, there will be a referencing style. So I'm sure the tutor will try to take us through about the referencing style. Thank you very much, and God bless you all.
Thank you for the wonderful presentation, sir.
So much.
Thank you very much
for the wonderful presentation.
That was a nice.
Thank you very much too.
Dr. Gaskiya, I don't think I and the participant have the words to appreciate this year marvelous and incisive, impactful presentation, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
I'm overwhelmed, to be sincere. I learned a lot. I've seen new words, new terms, new ways of doing things. And I believe also the participants are with me. They have learned a lot. In fact, I'm just discussing with some of my colleagues here that we are going to give you more time to come over, if you so permit, to trace and to expatiate some of this concept that you have just introduced to us.
It's okay. You're always welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Eska. We quite appreciate it. On behalf of the director, the management, the career service staff, the participants all over, we are saying, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase you in knowledge, give you more strength and help to advance the frontier of
bless
knowledge.
You too.
Please, we are running short of time, but we allow 2 to 3 questions. If anybody is having a question, please, you can raise up your hand. The discussion continues.